So it's not all that common that I get absolutely elated, excited, eager. I can't think of any other E words to capture how thrilled I am to have today's guest on. Anna Long-Stokes is the owner of the Portland Girl in Portland, Oregon. She is the owner, esthetician. You might call her a Renaissance woman. I don't know if Michelangelo would agree. He probably would say yes, 2.0, frankly. She's also a writer, a clairvoyant, entrepreneur, traveler, and creator, and a general all-around, excuse my English, badass. And I'm excited to have her on the show today. Anna, thanks for joining us. How in the heck are you?
Thank you for having me, Austin. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, there's so much to talk about. And I want to be mindful of time and get into the weeds here of joy and delight and the rest of it. So as a starting point, what I figured we'd talk about is, as I was prepping for the show, I came across a couple of things that jumped off and attacked my eyeballs and said, you have to ask her about this, because in all my years in aesthetics and beauty, running sales teams, selling product, et cetera, I've never met an esthetician that has the background that you do, and no less the mission that you do. So I want to get into that. So specifically, why don't we actually do this to orient the audience? What exactly do you do first? And then I'll get into the more interesting question off the back of that so they have context.
Okay. Okay. So this is where I'm always like, okay, where do I get started? So I have been the owner. I started the Portland Girl over 5 years ago, and it's a skincare and sugaring studio in Portland. And before that, I was a social worker. So I had my master's in social work, got pretty bored with social work. I needed more of a creative outlet. I knew I wanted to do something with entrepreneurship. And so while I was working in Chicago, getting kind of building my career in social work, I went to aesthetic school on the side. And that led me to eventually move to Portland, Oregon. And I kind of went down this whole path of healing. I got certified in Reiki. I took an Asian bodywork program, which you probably didn't even find in my bio, but that definitely formed what I'm doing now. And I started the Portland Girl. And, you know, before I started the Portland Girl, I did have another skincare studio, which I sold. And I pretty much thought I was done with skincare after about 3 years of doing the solo esthetician thing. I thought, you know, this isn't really for me. This isn't for me. I don't like being on my own. I don't like feeling like I can't take vacations without losing my clients. So I sort of just decided skincare wasn't for me. I sold my studio for peanuts. And then I started doing business consulting because I loved the business side of running my company. And so I started doing consulting for all types of entrepreneurs, web designers, massage therapists, chiropractors, pretty much anyone who saw value in me. I would work with them and I would help them because I have a strategy mind and a kind of grassroots marketing. And so I did that for probably about 1.5 years. And then, being the typical Anna that I am, I said, you know, I kind of miss skincare. And so I said, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to do it bigger. I'm going to have more treatment rooms and I'm going to hire a team. And so that's when the Portland Girl came to life. And so, yeah, that's kind of a bit about just taking you up to today.
One of the things I found fascinating, bleeding into my question that I teased at and then took away from the audience. Here's the question with a bit of setup. I noticed that I think you just gently touched on this, that you studied Chinese medicine. You got your master's in social work. You've effectively taken all these things that are in disparate universes and created a symbiotic relationship between all of them that, in my eyes, gives you an edge. Yeah. So I'm curious, how has that symbiosis given you a leg up against the rest of the pack? Because I think a lot of people are, I don't want to say one-trick ponies in their education, but you brought in all these different things and smashed them together, and now you have a thriving business. And I suspect there's a correlation there that produced the cause, which is the outcome of your business being absolutely fire, let's say.
So that's a really great question. And I think sometimes I don't even think about that because it's just me. You know, I'm like, oh, well, that's just me. So I can't leave that part of myself out. But
Mm.
I think one of the things was, so when I got my first facial, when I was living in Chicago, I was getting my master's degree. And I remember I got my first facial ever. And I was like, what is this? And how have I not had a million of these? And then by my second facial, I was already like, why am I not doing this myself? Because this is like a little more glamorous than being a social worker, but you're also making people feel good. And so I have to be honest, like I'm not really your typical beauty girl. I never went into the beauty industry to, I don't know, make people prettier. I always looked at it as self-care. And I felt like if I really wanted to give back, I could give back by actually having a profitable company. So a big mission of the Portland Girl from day one is, a certain percentage of our revenue going towards causes that matter. And I think that really speaks to Portland, that, the people of Portland. It's, kind of like a city that gets down with that. But it just also was my personal mission of wanting to give back, and of the focus of our company really being around self-care. You're not going to see a lot of our marketing trying to shame women or make them feel bad about themselves. So I think that combo spoke to a lot of people, and they came in, and then it's backed by a lot of my business strategy and customer relations in why people stay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Two things come to mind. The first is that I think a lot of us in beauty are at times slipping away from the actual goal that we should all have, which is to become and be active promulgators of positive feels. So if we think about Botox, Dysport, body contouring, whatever it might be, the services that you're providing, facials or otherwise, the goal of that, like you said, isn't necessarily to make you look pretty. It's to help you feel pretty. And I think a lot of folks get that backwards or get that wrong. So that's one observation that I would remind the listener of, is to challenge your why. And moreover, get a damn why. As I look at your bio on the Portland Girl, which if you're looking for inspiration for web design, I'm not advocating stealing her ideas, but my God, she does have some fantastic web presence and the rest of it. But her mission's very clear. It's front and center. It's her why: people, pets, and planet. So, this is the mistake I see everyone make, to piggyback off what I just said, and tell me if you agree, is that we get myopic, we chase the dollar, and we forget the why. And like we've said on the show before, he or she that knows their why can weather any how. Shout out to Friedrich Nietzsche. Philosophy days, but anyway, we'll get away from philosophy. But I think the point is clear, and if you don't have a why, you're toast. And so, how did you end up landing on that as your why? Because it seems like from social work, it makes sense to be, or it makes sense that you would be an altruistic type. You want to help people, so I can see that evolution. But the other bits of your crafting your why, how did you craft your why? Is maybe the question, because I think a lot of people miss that and don't have their why.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I had going for me was I struggled. I'll be honest with you. I struggled hard with my first skincare studio. I was fumbling, and I began to dive into business teachings and self-study in the business world. So I'm pretty sure I read that the why book. What is it that Simon Sinek?
Start with why. Simon Sinek.
Yeah. I mean, I read that. I totally read that. Like when that came out. I've read every business book, and so I knew that it wasn't good enough to have like a good logo. It even wasn't good enough to be good. Like you had to have something. I had to have something that would connect with people. Yeah. So for me, it was really easy, because at that point, by the time I started the Portland Girl, after I'd already had kind of my semi-flop of an initial business, I knew I needed to stand out, and I knew it needed to be truly who I was. No one else. Whenever I'm working with consulting clients and they're sort of in that initial stage of building their business, I'm highly sensitive with what I want them to see related to competition, because I think when you're just starting out, it's so easy to be like, oh, she or he does it so well. How about I copy that? I've literally had my consulting clients be like, so I just want it to be like you. And I was like, but you're not going to be successful being me. You're going to be successful being you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that mission was a no-brainer, because how else could I explain to people, how I had this weird background and how I went from being a social worker to an esthetician. I had to connect the dots for them. And I think that played into my mission so that people were like, oh, of course you were a social worker before.
Here's a quick note on authenticity to piggyback off of Anna's point. In a world filled with other people, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's absolutely merits in pursuing and really discovering who you are, and then codifying that into a mission, slapping it on your digital face, and then owning it. This is what I am. And through that, you magnetize the right clients to you. And suddenly now, to piggyback off of, I think it's Simon Sinek that talks about the distinction between the infinite game and the finite game approach to business. The example is something like, and I'm going to probably get hit with some letter. Don't disparage Facebook and MySpace, whatever, who cares? I believe, and I'm going to make up let's just assume this is correct. MySpace is playing a finite game. We want to be the best in XYZ. Facebook sought out to change the way the world communicates. And guess who won?
Yeah.
The person, the team, the entity playing the infinite game, and having a mission sets you up to play an infinite game and not lose.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So that's interesting. You do this better than really, and I'm not being sycophantic. You do this better than anyone I've ever seen.
Thank you.
So take that.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Awesome. Well, since you've been not only in this field operationally as an esthetician, owner, operator, but you've also got a lot of backstory with the business side of things, obviously, as an operator. So I'm curious, are there glaring mistakes that you see estheticians make, specifically as they're solo estheticians? Maybe they're running a salon suite out of Phoenix or solo salons, or whatever. Are there glaring, predictable, repeatable patterns of mistakes you see with those types? Again, specifically with solo estheticians, that you would advise, don't do that. Or maybe they should just call you and become a client. I don't know, for your consulting.
That's such a good question. I see a range of things. And I'm in a lot of the aesthetics groups, and I give out free advice all the time. If anyone sees any value in it, I love helping others and sharing. So I would say this openly to non-coaching clients. I think one of the biggest things that I see, and I think this is with the newer generation of estheticians. I'm 38, so I'm not like a young pup anymore. And I did grow up when my formative years had nothing to do with Instagram. I see this thing happening with a lot of newer estheticians, maybe in their, late teens, early 20s, is if Instagram isn't generating them immediate revenue, they get like really depressed. And they'll talk about like, I'm so depressed. I keep doing these posts. I keep doing this. And I have to say, like, I don't know, my company has about 4,500 followers at this point. That's okay. I think for how long we've been around, it could be so much more if I put much attention on it. But I grew so much of my company through kind of this like old school marketing. And I think I heard this on an episode you did with another gal who's working out of Meridian, Idaho, where she talked about she gives her business card out 3 times a day. And I was like, that's amazing. That's brilliant. I mean, that's like kind of old school, but that is like, I had these little cards. I would bring them around to coffee shops. I know it's COVID right now and people hate paper, but when COVID's not a thing anymore, like don't forget that like flyers, postcards, business cards, I mean, all of those things, or collaborations with people in your community, like think outside the box. Because if you are putting all of your energy and attention into Instagram, it's a dangerous game you're playing, because your account could get shut down. You don't really have true followers. You have followers on Instagram, but have you brought them over to your email list? There's so many things related to marketing that I see sort of being done. I don't know, just being lost in the new social media generation. So that's one thing that I see happening. Another thing is I see, this kind of goes with the comparing yourself to others. I see a lot of newer solo estheticians going, hey, I'm going to start doing XYZ on my menu now. What should I charge? They're asking a group of 20,000 estheticians who live in all different parts of the country all different skill sets. So it's this inability to base pricing on tangible things, such as what are your expenses, or what does the competition in your area charge. So there's these more strategic issues I see happening, and the problem with bad pricing strategies is it's hard to climb out of that.
I think as a rule of thumb, and tell me if you disagree, you probably should be charging more than you do.
Usually when you're starting out, yes, I would totally agree. There are a couple of people who come out of aesthetic school with very inflated egos. And you know what? They usually do well, and it has nothing to do with their skill set. It's because they have this inflated sense of value, and good for them. Because when I started out, I was charging $40 a facial. I had no, I was like, oh my God, I suck. Even though I didn't suck. I wasn't great, but I didn't suck. Yeah. And I had to work on a lot of money mindset stuff to even get to the point where I could ask people for money.
Who do you, quick aside, because you've triggered me in all the right ways. Who would you suggest people look at for money mindset shifting?
That's an awesome question. So one of my favorite people I stumbled on back in the day was Denise Duffield-Thomas. She does Get Rich, Lucky Bitch is the name. Okay. And so she's kind of this semi woo-woo, but also strategic. She's a multi-million-dollar business mogul at this point. She's done online business. She's done offline business. And she's got this way and this comedy to her writing that it just makes you see what a lot of your money issues are, how to overcome them, and tangible exercises to work through them.
What's her name again?
Denise Duffield-Thomas.
Denise
Duffield-Thomas. Yeah. And so you can look up, I think Get Rich, Lucky Bitch is what she's really famous for. She has a money mindset boot camp, which honestly I've never taken, but I read all her books and just sort of immersed myself in anyone who would talk about money and how to work through your money issues.
Yeah. Way too many people have a scarcity mindset, and they don't understand concepts like the velocity of money. And, I think there's a lot of merit to thinking that is maybe a neighbor of things like The Secret. It's really a product of where you allocate your attentional resources. And if you're constantly focusing on, oh my God, everything's scarce, there's no clients, on Instagram, and money isn't just falling into my pocket, the world's ending, that's what you're going to manifest. And maybe manifest is the wrong word, but she sounds like she's a really interesting gal that listeners should go find. And her book, or is it a book or course, that the Get Rich?
She has both, but you can start with the books. See, if you might need the course, you might need extra help.
You might fall into her web. Yeah. All right. So, those are a few good starting points. I think the solo esthetician probably, and maybe you would agree, they largely suffer from the forces of inertia, meaning specifically having the gall to just take action. The last gal that I interviewed who said, like you just said, I went out to the grocery store. I complimented people on their brows, their lashes. They said thanks. And I said, oh, by the way, I work on those. Here's my card. And she blew up. Her first month, she did $5,000. She put in the work.
Yeah. I love that. And I have to say, one of the things, good for her, because I'll be honest, I think the reason I was successful so quickly with the Portland girl was because I saw it as an entity outside myself. Whereas previously, when I was a solo esthetician, I saw it as a representation of myself. And it's much harder to market yourself than it is to market something you believe in. At least that's the theme I have seen. So when I was walking around saying, I'm the only esthetician, come to me, I'm fabulous, something about that was really challenging for me. And I really struggled to get the clients in. Yeah. But when I restarted and it was like a company and I had employees, I just it's almost like I was marketing my team instead of myself. And that made it so much easier.
Let me take a stab here. It sounds like you went from playing a finite game to an infinite game that was the product of a shift of your mission.
I think so. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Wow. Listeners, heed Her advice: find your why, find your mission, and watch your business boom. So what isn't being talked about in beauty that should be, or should be getting more attention that's not?
That is a really good question. I feel like the beauty industry has seen a huge like revolution within itself. I feel like when I started the Portland Girl, it was almost 6 years ago. There wasn't all these podcasts. There wasn't people helping each other. So I will say, I know this is kind of like the opposite of what you're asking, but what I have seen is there's this increase in women and men in the industry actually saying, hey, play a bigger game. But I still feel like there is this thing happening in the industry. And the best way I can describe it is people don't actually see themselves as a business. And so they don't hold themselves to a lot of the principles and standards that businesses, I think all businesses should hold themselves to. So, and what I mean by that more tangibly is, you know, when I started the Portland Girl, I said, okay, I want my team to have hourly pay that's a living wage. I want them to have health care. I want them to have paid time off. I wanted to build the company that I didn't see a lot of beauty companies at the time playing that game. You know, the interviews I went to when I got out of school were like, okay, so I guess you can maybe have a job here, but you're going to have to sit here for like 40 hours a week and maybe you'll get clients and maybe you won't. You know, it was just sort of this kind of like illegal, you know, weird stuff happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reality is like either run a business or work for a good company, but don't like play halfway. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also testament to that particular individual. If they were to accept a position with some, I'm careful to not use highly explicit language here, even though I'm tempted to, morons, let's say, I'll use a softer term, that during the interview process position their company as being on the wrong side of the stick, so to speak, with language like that. You know, maybe you'll make my, no. Yeah. The person that takes that job does not know their value, which all then bleeds back into things like mindset, bleeds into things like having, I mean, an abundance mindset does piggyback obviously off of the mindset bit, but also knowing your value and lifting your prices and that kind of thing. So I would say, tell me if you disagree, if you're a new esthetician graduating from school and someone interviewing you says that or something like that, run.
You know, I mean, I would, but I guess everyone has their own journey and the way in which they want to gain clients and skills. It just didn't feel right to me. And so I avoided it, but maybe for some people, that's what they needed. I was sort of in the boat where I was like, look, if I want to work for someone else, I can get a good job as a social worker, or I can try to do this on my own and do it my way. I didn't really want to do the in-between contractor, which is kind of weird, the weird stuff happening in that world. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think, you know, the starting point for all of this being the project of building yourself, your own development, building a business, a brand, whatever, you have to know what your values are, what you will tolerate, what you will not, and stick to it no matter what.
Yeah.
Gun to your head, doesn't matter. I will not allow someone to lord over me like this as an employer, or I will not allow someone to nickel and dime me if I'm, you know, at a negotiation table, aka the cash register when the treatment's over, that sort of thing. You've got to know your value. If you don't, you're something's gone awry, and you need to go back to the whiteboard, in my estimation.
Yeah.
Well, in the spirit of doing a bit of a conversational whiplash here, I have to ask a few questions surrounding implementation of new products, services, and that kind of thing, and how you have seen folks successfully launch a new modality, a new treatment. I think a lot of people, especially with high-end devices, get it wrong, or they bite off more than they can chew. They add 5 things at once, and they have a staff of themselves.
Yes.
Good luck. So how do you think about implementing new services and products?
Okay, so this is a fun one because I think it's kind of depends on your market. So Portland is a decent sized city. And so I knew when I started the Portland Girl that I needed it to be fairly niche. Um, and so for me, it was like facials and sugaring. That's it. We don't have to do lashes. We don't have to do everything under the sun. Um, but I will say there are clients in smaller towns or smaller cities where maybe it's going to make a huge difference if they offer more services versus if they don't, because maybe there's not a lot of people offering those things. So maybe they do kind of need to be the one-stop shop. So I will say, I think it depends on your market. But what I have seen people be most successful doing, including ourselves, is get really good at what you do and then look at where you can branch out. So we really focused on being the best at sugaring and the best at a basic facial. And I saved up my money. It was at least a year and a half before we got like an LED, a microderm. And I mean, I put paying myself, I'll be honest, I didn't pay myself for the first 6 months or so of starting the Portland Girl. I was paying my team, I was paying the rent, I was doing all that stuff. But I put paying myself first. So, and then I saved up for a microderm. I didn't do it like backwards.
Yeah.
And then it's like the microderm and the LED. Sure, we have signature facials that include those. It's also something we add on to a lot of services so that people can just see the difference of, you know, the results when you do add in some advanced equipment and technology. But I think that for me, I was a little more risk adverse. So I didn't do the whole, I'm going to go buy an oxygen machine and a microderm and an LED and get this training and get that training. I do see people do that and they usually fail at all of them because they never get good at any of them. You know, buying 5 machines isn't going to make you the best esthetician. Giving more facials is going to make you the best.
So Jim Collins has a book called Good to Great. But I wonder if you missed the other side of the equation coming off the back of what you just said, which is that you've got to be great before you can become good. Meaning you've got to be great at what you already do before you look at the next thing you want to become good at, where you rinse, repeat. You add modality A, now I'm great. Now I can add modality B, you know, et cetera. And that's like an infinite loop as you build out your portfolio. Because I think a lot of
and then you're building trust. You're building trust because if you are great at one thing, you know, a lot of our clients, they'll start out as sugaring clients because who doesn't need a good hair removal experience? And then I'll say, hey, what are you doing for your skin? Like, talk to me about how's your skin doing? So then we'll start talking and then they'll go, oh, this girl knows a lot about skin. And then they'll book a facial and it's as easy as that. Once they trust you at one thing, they're more likely to trust you at all the things.
Yeah. Huh. I've been researching competence, credibility, psychologically to figure out, okay, what are the markers that you have to tick, the boxes you got to check, let's say, in order to pull that off so that you can have the trust. Because, you know, there's a book, The Trusted Advisor. I'm sure you've read or heard about at least.
I haven't.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. Essentially, I'm going to grotesquely mischaracterize the contents of the book, I'm sure. And the author's going to send me hate mail. But it's something like, hey, newsflash, the goal of an interaction with a potential client of any variety, in any industry, in any role setting, whatever, is you've got to become the trusted advisor, which means you've got to be credible. You've got to be a person of high character. A shorthand for being a person of high character is knowing your values and not deviating from that and having a mission. And then through that tincture, you ultimately can become the expert that they turn to for advice. Hey, I had this situation, this challenge. What do I do about it? Bam, here comes Anna. You need this. Buy this. You don't need this. By the way, don't buy this, but you need this.
Yes. And that's kind of like a semi lecture I give a lot of the new estheticians I hire is, hey, let's talk about sales. Sales isn't sales. Sales is education. So, you know, I get these just wholesome gals right out of school and they're like, oh, I don't want to sell. I don't want to be that sleaze bag. I don't want to be the used car salesman. I'm like, that is not sales. I'm sorry. Education is where the sales happen. And if you aren't educating from a place of knowing that you know more than the Walgreens worker who sold them their last cleanser, like it, you know, if you can't see yourself as different than that, then you're not going to make it as a professional, because it's not only about, yeah, sure, I want them to hit retail goals. I want our clients to have good skin. I want them to know that when they come in for a monthly facial, their skin's improving. But if they're using, dumpster products at home, like I can't
Hey, don't
help
rail
them.
against St. Ives and the peach scrub. I use that
I
for
would
30
never.
years.
Just kidding. And so I think that's one of those, the trusted advisor comes up a lot with new estheticians, not wanting to quote unquote sell to people. It doesn't have to be sales, it's education. And if you are a professional and you want the best for your clients, it's just an extension of the service.
Education is a short circuit for inception, where the buyer, the clients, adopts your idea as their own and thus avoids reactance and resistance and all the things that blow up a deal or a sale. Or
I like that. Yeah.
Whatever. Because look, here's the deal. And you know this, but listeners may not. People want certainty. When I go to Best Buy, which I've had to do 16 times now to buy this camera setup that I'm working on, every single moron I've talked to has led me astray. And now I have no faith in it, no confidence that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to buy again another $4,000 camera. That's the wrong damn thing. And then I'm going to have to go back and return. And I need to get a cam link this time and this and that and the other. What I want is I want to go to someone and say, hey, my world's on fire. Do you have a fire extinguisher? And have him say, yeah, I do. And here's how you use it. Thank God. Certainty.
Yes.
Provide certainty. That's the outcome that buyers are starved for. Okay, don't get me off the rails in a sales sermon here. My primary interest in life, because it turns out everything in life is selling. You want to go on a date? And this is again, I'm off the rails, but let's bring it back to you. I think probably the most impactful thing we can leave with today, and again, like we talked about before the show, I've got to have you on for a round two. So we'll make that happen down the line, hopefully.
Cool.
But how do you direct your attention, right? You're a business owner now. So now we're getting away from the initial question of, hey, I'm a solo esthetician, help, to now I've transitioned, which is another topic entirely, how you knew it was time to jump. But now in your current role, how do you delegate your attention? How do you choose the right fires to put out? How do you figure out which next plot of land you want to build on, so to speak, with your attention and your limited 8 hours a day as a business?
That's been hard. I think I'm a really good delegator, and I like to take my team members who may just see themselves as estheticians, and they all have these like unique traits that make them good at something else that maybe is outside of just their aesthetics role. So there's been a lot of, I feel like trying to develop team members who show interest in doing a lot of it for me. And so some people might be like, judge me for that, but I think that it makes, even if estheticians don't see it now, when they go get their next job, they're going to be able to say, yeah, not only did I sugar it and do microderm and do all these things, like I helped train team members. I helped come up with quarterly facial specials. So I've really learned to delegate and project manage my company. We have a big project management software. Everyone's a part of it. I assign tasks. I follow up. So I would say that my time at this point is mostly spent with delegation and project management. And that's the only way I can keep it all going.
Yeah, of course. You've got to know what you're exceptional at and then what you're not, and delegate everything that you're not exceptional at.
Yeah.
What's the project management software that you're using? If you don't mind.
So we use Basecamp.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we found it, we were doing this thing where we were doing like weekly emails, or we send emails to the team. So we do Slack for communication.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's more like shout outs to each other, kind of like just touch and go communication. But Basecamp is where we do like a weekly recap for the team to get everyone on the same page. I can assign to-dos. They can assign to-dos to me. I mean, we just, I run my business off of it. I couldn't do it without it.
I love that. I think a lot of people miss a massive opportunity to leverage technology to make them more efficient so that they can run leaner teams, have fewer headcount, widen their margins, and ultimately better serve their customers by, minimizing friction at 1,000 different points along the operational and process side of things. So Basecamp, Slack, go download it. Thank Anna later. And send me hate mail if you don't like it for some reason. We'll leave Anna alone. Well, very cool. Gosh, yeah, we're gonna have to have you on, because you literally just sprung another 50 ideas of topics that we could hammer through in the next show.
Totally.
But as a closing note, actually, this is the preface to the closing note. Is there any glaring advice that is so obvious yet so many people miss it in this universe that you would give them as a temporary departing note until next time?
Ooh.
Pro tips with Anna. Hashtag the Portland girl.
Okay. Okay. This one, it's a sneaky one. It's to have boundaries.
Tell me more.
So what I see happening a lot, and I totally struggled with this too, and it's kind of an ongoing struggle, so it's always top of my mind, is that I see this a lot with solo estheticians, but it happens with, people who are running larger companies too, is that either they have bad boundaries with their clients or they have bad boundaries with their team members. And so the result of that, and this is why it's so important, it's sneaky, but it's so important, is people end up hating their business, or they hate their clients, even though it's their fault that their clients do naughty things. Their clients text them at midnight on a Saturday to book an appointment for the next day. So there are boundaries of your time and boundaries of communication. And those things are important to me, because I've seen it sort of run a lot of estheticians out of business, when it honestly could have been solved through some digital systems and some clear communication and some just boundaries with your clients. And they'll respect you more for it.
I am thinking of a song. I think it's called Take My Breath Away by Celine Dion. Hashtag 93. Words of wisdom. Listeners, rewind this, listen to that again, and get yourself some damn boundaries, because you probably don't have them. All right. Lovely. That's amazing advice. And by the way, no one's ever said that, so I'm glad that you've enlightened us. That's great. That's very exciting.
Awesome.
Love it. All right. Well, we're getting the hook on time. We got to get back to our real work. So where can our listeners find you if they want to connect with you, pick your brain, get a facial, get some sugaring? Maybe they're in East Portland and they want to drop in and slap you a high five. How do they connect?
I would say best way to get in touch with me is follow me on Instagram at the Portland Girl, or Portland Girl Beauty is our Instagram handle, Portland Girl Beauty, or check out my website. It's Your Esthetics Empire. And that's where I do more of the individual business advice. And you can contact me and I'll actually get a hold of you. My company, the Portland Girls, run by my whole team at this point, so I'm harder to reach. You're not going to see me there very much. But yeah, YourAestheticsEmpire.com. That's where people can shoot me email, check out blog posts I have. I'm starting a podcast in March.
Nice.
So yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Look, listeners, I'm looking at her Your Aesthetics Empire website right now. Let me just say it like this. If you're not tethered into her world, you are missing out. So get off your backside, go connect with her. Anna, you're amazing. I'm glad we can make this happen. We will have to have you on again, assuming you're up for it down the line.
I would love
next
that.
Month or so.
Yeah.
And again, thanks for stopping in.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Austin.
Awesome. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Bye.